You're listening to Day 13, The Famine. Join us at the table for a little extra.
Well, the title of today's reading, The Famine, it's really bad. A famine is terrible. So it looks like the most horrible thing that could happen from Jacob's perspective and his family's perspective. But God sees above it all and sees he's not constrained by time. So Jacob and his family think it's the worst time ever. And then when they come to Egypt, Joseph may be thinking, this is the best time ever. I'm going to get to see my brothers. I'm going to get to see my father. Or at least I'll find out if my father's still alive. And this could be a good time for him. He could have also had these thoughts. We see a little bit of evidence that he might have said, okay, you're going to get yours now. You know, you're here before me. You're bowing before me.
But funny that he had forgotten that dream. Like it's at that point when he literally sees them bowing before him that he remembers the dreams.
But remember, too, that he named his he named his kids, a name that helped him to forget the trouble and suffering in his own family. So I think he tried to forget who he was. And I wonder if when this happened, if he even expected that he was going to see anyone from his family, much less they were going to be bowing before him, at that point. So I just wonder if this was just a complete
surprise,
a shock to him at that point.
I'd seen another devotional that at least posed that question too, that with him being as powerful as he was, he could have gotten a chariot and gone over and found his dad and all of them and said, look at me now. Look at me. I'm number 2, blah, blah, blah. He didn't. He literally moved on. He was like, I'm done with y'all. Mm-hmm. So then to have kind of what would be some of your worst enemy, or at least people that hurt you so badly right in front of you in your presence.
But isn't that just, it's so good because, you think about a wound that we have or something that we've buried deep. Unless we deal with that, will true healing and will God really be able to be magnified and glorified in it? And so here Joseph is, he has buried, he has stuffed what's happened in his past and his identity has become this great Egyptian, right? But now here he's faced with his past again. And we know as we continue to read the devotion that he had such an important part to play in saving his people. Mm-hmm. And he never would have dreamed that his own life would have led into the saving of his people. He thought his identity now was the Egyptians, but how beautiful was it for God to bring his family there and to help him to deal with what had happened in the past so that God could be glorified and save the people of Israel.
He had to open those wounds, didn't he?
Did, yeah.
He had to address those wounds.
Here's an interesting little extra. All 10 of the brothers that were involved were there. Not his dad, not his youngest brother. That nobody that wasn't involved was there.
Right.
Only the 10. All 10.
And
I thought that was interesting that
dream.
he sent all 10.
I love what we're getting into because now this is where we can get to the nitty-gritty of what it was that needed to change in Joseph's life to allow God to step in and heal. And what happened in the future was magnificent.
Right. It didn't just save his family. It saved the world.
Yeah.
Well, this saved around. Joseph, too, if you think about it.
Right.
I know he saved a nation ultimately, but this saved his soul.
Yeah.
Right.
It saved his dad. It saved his brothers. It restored his dad. And there's so many things about Joseph's story that I think we can just write home about that are just, our God is so good.
He's full of grace. And there's so much grace in this story.
Yes.
That's what the book is about, redeeming us to the Father.
That's right.
Exactly. And it was easy for Joseph to forgive his brothers at that point when he saw that God had done all this and that made him weep for the years that were lost, but he loved his brothers now. He restored that relationship is crazy.
And I love this because it shows the humanity of Joseph, how he responds to, his brothers in this real kind of angry, tough man kind of way. But yet we know later on that he had to leave the room to go cry because his heart was so for his brothers. We're so torn between who we are in Christ and this human side of us that wants to respond this way. But we know that with God, he leads us a different path, and that path is so much greater. And so I love this part of the story because I feel like it's the climax, the turning point of the fullness of who Joseph is.